Miscarriage happens to an astounding 1 in 4 women. Early infant loss, 1 in 250 women. But for generations, these issues have been hidden in the shadows. Tonight, we're talking to experts with the latest in medical research and the women who share their stories. Okay, so I'm standing here with a group of really brave young ladies who are part of an infant loss and miscarriage support group led by Erica Jones. Why is this a cause so close to your heart?
It's a cause that's close to my heart because I lost my daughter Harmony 5 years ago, and there were no resources in Raleigh County. There were no support groups, and I needed to find other ladies to talk to. I was struggling mentally, physically, spiritually, and so we started a support group, and through the years I've met every one of these ladies, and they have helped me walk through my journey. It's a really lonely journey, so it's nice to know that you have other ladies that you can talk to.
What does the rest of the world, someone who hasn't experienced that loss, how would you describe it to them?
It's very isolating. Yeah. That's why this is so important, because I don't know a situation where you can feel as alone. Even if you have a spouse or family, you're not the mother who's gone through it.
I think that, you know, as we become adults, we know that people die. It's an everyday thing. And then when you grow up, you don't expect to have to mourn the loss of your child. And that's something that we're not prepared for. And it's something that I think people don't take into consideration when we go to grieve, because we don't know how to grieve properly.
It's not the cycle of life. It's a cut in the cycle of life that you imagine that you're going to have a child and raise a child and then grow old, and that child's going to take care of you, and then you're going to pass away and see their life, and it doesn't happen that way.
And you've mentioned in the past that sometimes it makes it harder when people don't acknowledge the fact that your child was here.
For me personally, that's a huge struggle for me. I have a wonderful group of family and friends, and through the years they've included Harmony in many things. We include her in pictures. I have an aunt that includes her on the Christmas tree, and so that's a huge blessing for me. But I know I've met many ladies throughout this journey that their family are not supportive of that. They encourage the mothers to pretend it didn't happen, and I see that struggle and I see that pain, and it's something that's very, very widespread, that our family and friends don't quite understand that we want our babies to be acknowledged.
You never know what to say when anybody passes away, that, you know, it's just a sensitive subject, but especially one that you don't talk about. You know, like, it's that much harder to discuss, and when you just want to talk about your baby, that makes it infinitely harder. So when people avoid it at all costs, generally. So
I think it's something that it definitely needs to be talked about. I mean, I'm 25, and I thought I would get married and have children, and until I got a diagnosis with Phoenix, I was unaware that these things happened. I thought, when you want to start a family, or even sometimes when you don't want to start a family, you have a baby and they grow up, and it's shocking. It's still shocking to me that, I mean, we learn about all of these things and we don't learn about that. We don't learn that people lose babies, that it does happen.
And I know in some cases you have minutes with your child, in some case you have hours, in some case days, or hospitals doing enough to support that experience.
I think they're learning. I think they're trying, that depending on the hospital, they're really trying. They took pictures of them. We probably got 20, 30 pictures of them that they had printed and mailed to us. Like, we wouldn't have had any of those things. Things that we would have never even considered to do. One nurse even made, we were worried that something would happen, so to the items we already received, so she actually made an additional box, like, of their hands, like they're holding hands together. Just things that you can never replace.
The measures that they took to make the worst day of my life beautiful was a debt that I can never repay. I mean, my family had a separate waiting room so that they didn't have to sit with other families that were celebrating a birth. They provided us, like you said, the handprints, footprints. They sent me cards on my due date. When it came, they sent me a card. They sent me a Christmas card that said, "You and your baby are remembered this season." The nurses from the hospital, they were amazing. I also had a cuddle cot that allowed me to spend time with him in the hospital.
How important is that closure?
I don't think there's ever really closure, but I think that there's time that, like I have time to remember what he looked like. I have time to see his hands and his feet and take the pictures that I wanted.
What about when you come home from the hospital? Where do you see the greatest need for and support for women after that experience?
I had a family member go to my house and close my daughter's door and put all the baby things away. So then when I did go back, I could kind of pretend like it wasn't happening.
It's devastating to go home. I went home and I remember just laying on the couch, just laying there and crying. I didn't care about anything that happened in the world. I didn't care about my job. I didn't care about the house. I didn't care about anything. My life as I saw it was over. Harmony had been my first child. I had waited for her for my whole life, and within a matter of minutes, my life ended.
Coming up after the break, we'll have more on how these women found their path forward, plus medical experts weigh in the latest in medical research. All that and more after the break. As you just heard, for generations, miscarriage and early infant loss have been issues hidden in the shadows. Tonight, we're back with the women who share their stories. Why do you think this is such, you guys are an extraordinary group of women coming forward and talking about a very difficult subject. Why do you think it's so difficult for women to talk about this issue?
We're vulnerable. We don't want to seem like we're seeking attention. You're looked down upon if you need help or need counseling. I think there's lots of stereotypes with it. And for me, it was super hard because I have this personality, like I can do anything I want, whenever I want. And I started seeing a counselor a year after I lost Harmony because I was in the deepest, darkest place that I had ever been. And for me to understand that it wasn't a negative thing to seek counseling and get myself healthy was a huge hurdle. And I think that a lot of people struggle with, who cares what other people think? This is what I have going on in my life, and I'm going to talk about it because it's important to me. And I wish that more women would have the support and the courage to talk about their babies, because I think we can all agree it has helped us all at some point to have each other. It has helped us, I know in every support group meeting or every Facebook message that I've talked to any of these ladies, I have been in a bad place that day, and it has helped me tremendously through this journey. If it's just one day, every one of these ladies have helped me get through one day of this journey, and that's huge.
You mentioned one case where there was a potential employer, there was an employer, and he essentially told the woman, it's day 2, come back to work.
Yeah, maternity leave is to bond with your baby and to experience things with your baby, and I think some employers think, well, you don't need that time. You don't have a baby. And I haven't had that experience. I don't know if any of you guys have had that experience, but a woman did tell me that it was just come back to work. And I think too, even some people in your close circle, it's a distraction for you. They're like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And maybe it's good intentions, but I think that it's a rush. It's just a pick yourself up. And I think that women have a we need to be strong, we need to get through this, and it's hard to show that you're broken, and that's what it does to you.
I've had several ladies come to support groups that were suicidal. They struggled at the hospital and on. We don't receive counseling or anything afterwards. If you don't have insurance, you're not going to get counseling services. And there's just so many things that we need to do better in society to help moms through this journey, because it's detrimental to their health. You know, most of us have families, we have husbands or other kids, and if we're stuck in that place after a loss of a child, then we need help. We need help to get out, and it starts with education.
I think things like this are important too, because not just after, but I wish I would have known before, while I was pregnant, that stuff like this happens. I went into the hospital, I was a week past my due date, and my baby wasn't moving, and when they told me she didn't have a heartbeat, I said, well, that doesn't happen anymore. I had no idea. I was completely clueless that was even a thing that could happen. And I mean, I know that's a kind of odd situation, like as an OB or a midwife, to come into someone's room when they're 20 weeks pregnant. They can't be like, hey, your baby might die for no reason. But you can see things like this, you know, on TV or on Facebook, and at least it's really scary, but the shock is really hard to deal with too, if you don't know that this is something that can happen.
What would you guys say to that woman who's going through this experience in home and doesn't have a support group? What would you tell, and doesn't feel like they can speak out or reach out?
So I think finding people who have been through the same thing, and I'm so thankful I've found these group of ladies, because they know. Like, I have messaged Erica before, like, I'm having such a bad day, like, this is going on, I need help. And just talking to her and knowing that she knows that pain. Or even Kendra, like, they know. They know what the pain is like. So find people who will help, who, even if they don't even say anything, just listen, because we want our babies to be validated. We want them to exist, even though they're not here.
Do you guys have any messages for that woman sitting at home who thinks there's no way out?
You're not alone. I mean, we have this group, and I mean, the husbands come as well, and they share their grief stories just as much as we do. And you know, if you don't have that support system, you do with us. So I mean, no matter what, you always will have us, and you can come and you can scream and cry and vent and yell all you want, and we'll just sit and listen. So.
And two, people say things and they don't even mean anything by it. Like, well, what happened? Well, if we knew what happened, we wouldn't have been in this situation. Or, well, did you exercise? Did you eat good? Did you, like, I done everything that I was supposed to do?
And that's a hard question to get, because you're already blaming yourself.
Yeah, there's so much
you
guilt.
You feel like a terrible mom.
Yeah, like,
for
did you
losing
eat
your babies.
too many chicken nuggets? Or,
yeah.
I mean,
Question
it just,
everything you did during that
yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
I still do
Was
too.
it too much soda? I mean, you just
Yeah.
you question everything.
Did I miss my prenatal vitamins?
Yeah.
Like, should I have taken them before I got pregnant? There's so many things, and we don't need you to put guilt on us. We can do it ourselves.
I wish that we had more research, and I wish that more emphasis was put into this topic, because it would really help moms to know, okay, this was what happened. This is where, you know, things went wrong, because it's left on all of our shoulders. It's left with us questioning, did I drink too much soda? Did I forget that medicine one day? Did I exercise not enough? You know, and it's hard. We wear that for life, and it's just not fair.
We'll be back in just a moment with some of the leading experts in the field. They're answering two of the big questions that people seem to have. Why me? And is there anything I could do to prevent it? Welcome back. In part 3 of our special, we're talking to two local experts on the issue, Dr. Joe Ellington and Dr. Robert Edwards. They're answering common questions women have when it comes to miscarriage and early infant loss.
No, pretty much I tell my patients, you almost can't make yourself miscarry. You know, it's nothing they did. It's not their fault. Unfortunately, early pregnancy loss is relatively common. It's estimated around 10% of all clinically diagnosed pregnancies end in miscarriage.
Most of the causes of pregnancy loss are not something we have any control over. Things that you do have some control over is pretty much keeping yourself pretty healthy. And then most likely also seeking early prenatal care, so if there are any potential problems that could be identified, you may be able to correct some of that. But most of the times people have miscarriages or loss of pregnancy totally unrelated. Maybe genetic in nature, maybe things that just nature's way of correcting things that weren't going to work out. Biggest part is if you have medical conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, other medical problems, correcting that beforehand. Under good control. So diabetes does increase risk of miscarriages. Problems such as people have different behaviors such as smoking, alcohol usage, other drugs, substance abuse disorders, trying to correct that before you get pregnant. They certainly don't help. It does increase statistically the risk of miscarriage. So if you can correct those medical problems or conditions or behaviors beforehand, that helps. Seeking early prenatal care helps as far as guidance, as far as what things are appropriate or not during the pregnancy. And then you could follow and make sure that if everything's going okay, then you have the best optimal chance of success with your pregnancy.
It is nice for a woman to know she's not alone. You know, sometimes women feel that something's wrong with them, that there's they're an aberration. But you know, a lot of women, when they get to talking to their friends, their family members, you know, they say, "Oh yeah, I had the same thing happen to me." So you know, it is relatively common, but I don't think that the majority of the population realize just how common it is. We actually have a few resources in our area. I know some of the local churches have some support groups, you know, so that people can be around other women that have been through the same thing. We actually have, you know, psychology and psychiatric services if that's needed. You know, sometimes medication is even needed. But you know, with a supportive family, and most people will, you know, it's hard. That's the worst part of a miscarriage, is the mental recovery, and you know, it's devastating for not just the woman, but you know, the whole family. Well, it would be nice if, I guess, people realize that how common it is, because I think that would open communication for other women with their friends and family members. You know, a lot of times a woman, if they've had a miscarriage, it's one of the things they're worried about is, oh, you know, next time am I going to have another miscarriage? You know, fortunately, women that experience recurrent pregnancy loss, you're probably only looking at about a 1% chance for women that have recurrent pregnancy loss. And by definition, recurrent pregnancy loss would be 3 or more miscarriages. If a woman does experience recurrent pregnancy loss, there's actually blood tests that we can do on women to look to see, because there are medical problems that predispose women to miscarriage. And if a woman has one of these problems, there's things that we can do to decrease their risk.
Whenever we were talking about trying to educate more people on how this could happen before it happens, I wanted to say our high schools have a health class. And the last several years, local high school has invited me in to talk to their health class about pregnancy and infant loss. And that has been a tremendous awareness opportunity, in my opinion, because yes, I'm super blessed that the high school lets me come in, because unfortunately, a majority of the not a majority, a large amount of high school students are in situations where they could experience a miscarriage or infant loss, and they need to know that this is a possibility. I want them to be prepared of what could happen, that not all pregnancies end with a baby coming home. So I would love to see more high schools offer opportunities for awareness in their health classes. That way, our young folks can know about this beforehand, because I was just like Katie. I had no idea that this could happen, and I was a mature adult woman. So the more that we can do for awareness events like that, awareness opportunities like this today, I think is a blessing, and we're doing everything we can to get the word out that miscarriage happens so frequently. Infant loss happens much more frequently than what you realize.
One of the main points we're trying to get across with this special is that you don't have to go through this alone. The women we spoke with tonight are part of a support group called Harmony's Breath. To learn more about what they do and who they are, you can check out their page on Facebook. For WVVA News, I'm Annie Moore. Thanks for tuning in.